Welcome to Religion Unpacked. Is Christmas more pagan than Christian? The true origins of Christmas, from pagan gods to Jesus Christ. It is a scene recognized around the globe, the warm glow of lights in the winter darkness, the scent of pine and cinnamon, the gathering of family, the exchange of thoughtfully wrapped gifts. This is Christmas. For billions, it is one of the most sacred days of the year, a profound religious observance celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, the central figure of Christianity. Yet, for millions more, it is an entirely cultural or commercial event, celebrated without any religious context at all. This holiday is a unique global phenomenon, but have you ever stopped to unpack the traditions themselves? Why do we bring an evergreen tree inside our homes? Why do we hang mistletoe? And most importantly, why December 25th? If we look to the Christian Gospels, we find detailed accounts of the Nativity, of Mary, Joseph, the shepherds, and the Magi. But what we don't find is a date. The Bible never specifies the day or even the season of Jesus' birth. In fact, many historians argue that the mention of shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night, makes a winter birth in Bethlehem unlikely. So how did the global Christian church, after centuries of debate, settle on December 25th? The answer is not a simple one. It is a fascinating story of faith, astronomy, politics, and one of the most successful examples of cultural adaptation in human history. This isn't a story about debunking Christmas. It's about understanding its rich, complex layers. To find the true origins of this December date, we must first look not to Bethlehem, but to the skies. Long before the first Christmas was ever celebrated, ancient civilizations were master astronomers. Their very survival depended on the rhythm of the seasons, and that rhythm was dictated by the sun. In the northern hemisphere, one celestial event was more important, more feared, and more celebrated than any other: the winter solstice. Occurring around December 21st, the solstice is the shortest day and the longest, darkest night of the year. For ancient peoples, this was a moment of profound anxiety. The sun, the source of all life and warmth, was at its weakest. The world was cold, dark, and seemingly dying. But the solstice was also a moment of profound hope, because it marked the great turning point. It was the moment the sun died, only to be reborn. From this day forward, the light would begin to return. It was a cosmic promise that life would triumph over darkness, and that spring would eventually come again. This concept, the death and rebirth of the light, the victory of light over darkness, is a deeply powerful religious idea. And nearly every major culture in antiquity built a festival around this very moment. The Egyptians celebrated the rebirth of Horus. The Persians honored Mithras, the god of light, who was also said to be born at this time. The Norse and Germanic tribes began their 12-day festival of Yule. But the most famous, most influential, and most widespread of all these winter festivals was happening in the very heart of the Roman Empire. It was a week-long celebration of chaos, feasting, and gift-giving. It was called Saturnalia. If you were a Roman citizen in the week leading up to December 25th, you would not be working. You would be celebrating Saturnalia. Named for Saturn, the god of agriculture and abundance, this was arguably the most popular, joyous, and raucous festival of the entire Roman year. It was a time of pure societal inversion. All work and business were suspended. The law courts and schools closed. Gambling, normally forbidden, was permitted in public. Most dramatically, the rigid social order was turned upside down. Slaves were permitted to dine with their masters, and in some households, the masters would even serve them. It was a symbolic, temporary return to a mythical golden age of equality, ruled by Saturn himself. But two of Saturnalia's traditions feel incredibly familiar to us today. The first was gift-giving. On the final days of the festival, known as the Sigillaria, Romans exchanged small, often humorous, gifts, particularly wax candles, known as sirai, to light the dark nights, and small pottery figurines. The second, as we just mentioned, was light. Candles were lit everywhere, a symbolic act of warding off the darkness and welcoming the return of the sun. Saturnalia was a beloved, chaotic, and essential part of Roman life, but it was not the only solar festival. As the Roman Empire grew, it absorbed countless faiths, including the popular mystery cult of Mithraism, a Persian deity of light. And in the 3rd century, the Emperor Aurelian saw a problem. The empire was fracturing. It was too vast, with too many local gods. Aurelian needed a way to unify its people under a single, supreme deity. In 274 AD, he enacted a brilliant political and religious maneuver. He declared a new, empire-wide holiday, Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birthday of the Unconquered Sun. And the official date he chose for this grand celebration? December 25th. He didn't invent this date. He simply formalized a tradition that was already popular. By linking the birth of the unconquered sun to the winter solstice, he gave all Romans, from Syria to Spain, a single, powerful god to rally behind. So, by the 4th century, December 25th was already the most important imperial holiday of the year. It was the birthday of the sun god. But at this exact same moment, another faith was rising, one that would soon conquer the empire itself, and it too had a story of a divine birth. But let's leave the marble temples of Rome for a moment and travel north to the cold, dark forests of Germania, Scandinavia, and the Celtic lands. Here, the Roman gods held little power, but the solstice was everything. The Germanic and Norse peoples called this midwinter period Yule. Yule was a 12-day festival of feasting, drinking, and ritual, all centered on the death of the old year and the rebirth of the new. It was a time to honor the ancestors and to appease the gods, like Odin, the Yule father, to ensure the sun would return. And it is from these northern traditions far from Bethlehem that we inherit some of our most iconic Christmas symbols. First, the Yule log. A whole massive log would be chosen and brought into the home's hearth. It was lit using a piece of the previous year's log, symbolizing continuity. This fire was meant to burn through the longest night, a beacon of light and warmth against the cold and any dark spirits that might be lurking. Its ashes were then saved for the next year, believed to hold protective and fertile powers. And then, there is perhaps the most beloved symbol of all, the tree. In the dead of winter, when the deciduous trees were bare skeletons, one plant remained green and alive, the evergreen. To the ancient peoples, this tree was a powerful, mystical symbol. It represented resilience, endurance, and the promise of life everlasting. While the Germans are most famously credited with the tradition of bringing a Yule tree indoors and decorating it, the practice of hanging evergreen boughs over doorways and windows was common across many cultures, meant to ward off evil and celebrate life in the midst of death. Finally, we have the curious traditions of holly and mistletoe. To the Celtic Druids, mistletoe was a sacred plant. It grew not on the ground, but on the branches of other trees, seemingly suspended between heaven and earth. It was seen as a symbol of fertility, peace, and truce. In fact, under Roman and Druidic custom, if enemies met by chance under a branch of mistletoe, they were required to lay down their arms and observe a truce until the next day. This is the distant root of our modern romantic tradition. Holly, with its sharp leaves and red berries, was seen as a protective plant representing the masculine, while the mistletoe represented the feminine. So, as we enter the 4th century, we have a world full of rich, powerful, and deeply loved winter traditions. We have the Roman Sol Invictus on December 25th, and we have the northern Yule with its trees, logs, and feasting. And into this world, Christianity arrives. In the first few centuries after Christ's death, his birth was not a major feast. The focus of the early church was on his death and, crucially, his resurrection, celebrated at Easter. But as Christianity grew, and especially after it became the state religion of the Roman Empire under Constantine, the church faced a significant challenge. How do you convert a population that is already deeply culturally attached to its own beloved winter festivals? You cannot simply tell millions of people that their traditions of feasting, gift-giving, and lighting fires in the dark are wrong. They won't stop. They will simply do it in secret. The leaders of the early church, like Pope Gregory the Great, understood this. They made a conscious, documented, and brilliant choice. The strategy was not eradication, but syncretism. Syncretism is the blending, the merging of different beliefs and practices. If a culture has a powerful tradition, you don't fight it. You absorb it. You baptize it. You recontextualize it with Christian meaning. And the church had the perfect story to do it. The Romans were already celebrating the birthday of the Unconquered Sun, S-U-N, on December 25th. What better date to place the birthday of the Sun, S-O-N, of righteousness, as Christ was called in the Scriptures? It was a perfect theological substitution. The pagan world celebrated the rebirth of the physical sun. The Christian world would now celebrate the birth of the spiritual light of the world. The candles of Saturnalia became the candles of Advent, symbolizing Christ as the light. The evergreen boughs became the Christmas tree, its triangular shape sometimes even used to explain the Holy Trinity. The holly, its sharp leaves, came to represent the crown of thorns, its red berries the blood of Christ. The feasting and gift-giving were reframed as a celebration of God's gift to humanity and the gifts of the Magi. This process took centuries, but it was incredibly effective. The church didn't invent a new holiday from nothing. It layered a profound new meaning onto a date and a set of traditions that already held deep spiritual power for people. This is not a conspiracy. It is the story of how culture works. So, when we ask, are the origins of Christmas pagan or are they Christian? The only correct answer is yes. Christmas, as we celebrate it, is a beautiful palimpsest, an ancient manuscript where layers of new text have been written over the old, but the faint traces of what came before are still visible, if you know where to look. This history does not diminish the profound religious meaning held by 2.5 billion Christians. For them, December 25th is, and always will be, a sacred celebration of the Nativity. Instead, this history enriches our understanding. It shows how this single holiday has become a global phenomenon, carrying within it the ancient, primal human need to find light in the darkness, to share warmth in the cold, and to celebrate the promise of life and rebirth. Whether you are celebrating the birth of a savior or simply enjoying the company of your family, you are participating in a tradition that connects you to the Romans, the Vikings, and the very first Christians. And that is the story of Christmas, Unpacked. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss a new upload.